I'm delighted to launch the second episode of our interview series exploring artificial intelligence and agency. The rapid development of artificial intelligence in recent years has prompted a resurgence of interest in core philosophical questions such as whether machines can achieve genuine forms of thought and agency. Throughout this series, leading philosophers and scientists will offer their perspectives on this topic, and we are fortunate to have Professor David Papineau as our guest in this episode. He is Professor of Philosophy of Science at the Department of Philosophy, King's College London, and his super work encompasses a broad range of topics from theories of representation, sensory experience, consciousness to physicalism and naturalism, causality and probability, epistemology and realism, and the list goes on. So, Professor Papineau, thank you very much for accepting your invitation.
Not at all. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
All right, so I'm going to start with a rather general question about what do you think of the relationship between intelligence, consciousness, and agency in general, regardless of whether we are going to discuss their implementation in, regardless of whether we are going to discuss their implementation in natural systems or in artificial systems. What do you think about the relation between these three things?
That's a big question. Let's start with agency. I think agency comes in degrees. You can have behavior in animals. Let's restrict it to that. That's purposive. That's directed towards some end, perhaps just in virtue of the way the animal's been designed by natural selection. And then you can have animals with some psychology. They're capable of learning. We might attribute to them beliefs and desires, and we can think of their actions now having a purpose, their behavior having a purpose, which is to satisfy certain desires. And at this stage, we have some level of intelligence, animals forming representations of the world and acting in the light of them. And then with humans, I think we have another layer of sophistication because we deliberate and we form intentions. I'm thinking here of Michael Bratman's work that shows that the forming of intentions to guide behavior over a period of time to form a plan can't adequately be explained just in terms of acting out of beliefs and desires. And I think that's the kind of intelligence we probably have in mind when we talk about human intelligence. So it's kind of deliberation that enables you to form long-term plans with coordinated stages and so on. Consciousness, I don't think consciousness needs to come into it. I don't think consciousness adds anything to what I've said. I'd certainly be inclined, we'll come to this I'm sure in detail later, but give or take a bit to say that organisms that can have their actions guided by intelligence in the last most sophisticated sense are going to be conscious, but I'd be happy to allow that a lot of simpler organisms are conscious too. So I don't think consciousness is particularly closely tied to agency and intelligence, but we'll come back to that, no doubt.
All right, very well. So let's leave consciousness aside for the moment. Speaking of agency, so would that be a right interpretation of you said that agency boils down to purposiveness, purposefulness, and goal-directedness in human beings and animals, and then there are degrees of goal-directed or degrees that they can manifest goal-directedness on the basis of whether they are doing this deliberately or not, intentionally or not.
Yes, I think goal-directedness is certainly a minimal condition, a necessary condition for agency. I'm not sure I'd want to argue that any bit of behavior in an animal or indeed plant that's goal-directed is going to count as agency. I mean, a sea slug that has nerves that make it immediately move away from some noxious stimulus, is it with no intervention of any psychological processing? Is it acting? I mean, is a sunflower that turns itself to follow the sun, is it acting? Is that agency? I don't especially want to argue about it. I mean, it's just a matter of definition. So, but yes, goal directedness is a necessary condition. Some people might dispute whether it's a sufficient condition.
All right, I'm going to relate that to discussion of artificial intelligence soon. But before that, would you think that there are two kinds of agency or intelligence that are manifested in human beings and animals, for example? Or there is just one kind of agency or intelligence, but comes in different degrees in this kind of entities?
My inclination would be to say that this is one general category that can come in different forms. So I wouldn't want to draw a line anywhere and say, yes, humans are agents, or I mean, perhaps people want to draw a line using consciousness, that organisms with consciousness are agents and organisms that are unconscious are not agents. I wouldn't want to draw a sharp line. I think there's a continuum from the sea slug right up to the humans. And there's more and more complicated mechanisms that are involved in getting the organism's behavior to be orientated to goals. And so you can have no psychology, just some kind of reflexes. You can have limited kind of psychology with stimulus response learning, and then you have more sophisticated response outcome learning, and then you have full scale deliberation, as you have in humans. And so I think of it as a continuum.
All right, very well. We will certainly return to the question of complexity or sophistication of agency in different kinds of entities. But to give a bit of metaphysical spin to what we have said already. So as human beings, we are seeing things as kinds. We understand the universe in terms of kinds, how different entities fall under different categories. So would you say that, for example, agency is some sort of genuine kind, either natural or functional, that includes different sorts of human, animal, or artificial entities? Or there are different kind of species, human beings, animals, and artificial systems, and agency is one of their properties?
I wouldn't want to distinguish between in this context properties and systems, where systems can be natural kinds and properties aren't natural kinds. I'm perfectly happy to think of certain properties, and the property of being a mammal, say, as being a natural kind. And yes, I think I would be quite happy to think of agency as a natural kind, but it would be a functional kind. It would be a kind of feature of systems that emerges from natural selection and produces a certain kind of sophistication, namely the ability to respond to changing circumstances with suitable behavior. And you will find that different organisms that can do this kind of thing will share a lot of similarities, but it will be a result of convergent evolution rather than homologous cases. I mean, intelligence in insects has evolved quite separately from intelligence in mammals, and again, intelligence in mollusks. So while there's similarities between the different kinds of intelligent systems, they will have evolved independently.
Of course. So, but very well. So kinds, seeing the structure of the word in terms of kinds, is supposed to come with some sort of objectivity. It is not supposed to be anthropocentric. With regard to agency and intelligence, do you think that would there be a non-anthropocentric way of categorizing agents or intelligent systems? Because basically we have basically our own case, first-hand experience of our own case as intelligent being or agents, and then we try to.
So I'm curious why you would think it's in danger of being just an anthropocentric category. I mean, I mean, is it just that we are measuring all these other organisms up to our own intelligence? Is anthropocentric in that way, or would you think that it's just due to our interest that we see this kind of feature of organisms? I don't think that's right. I think objectively there are many interesting similarities between different kinds of organisms that display sophisticated behavior, and those similarities, those real patterns are there independently of any observer.
All right, very well. So, very well. I'm going to relate that to the question of agency in artificial systems. Do you think that artificial systems too could demonstrate forms of agency? And then I'm going to relate that to what you said earlier about convergent evolution, because it is not as if they are going to be subject to natural selection per se. So then I'm going to continue that discussion in that term. But do you think that artificial systems too could demonstrate a genuine form of agency?
Oh yes, and I don't see any difficulty there. And I would say that, I mean, some clearly do display some kind of agency, and not, I mean, we can discuss where up the scale of more and more sophisticated agency they've got so far, but I don't see any principal barrier to their being on that spectrum, nor indeed to ascending, if you want to think of it like that, to the level of agency displayed by humans. But whether they've got there yet, that's a further question.
But would that gain this kind of agency on the basis of natural selection? Because you mentioned convergent, yeah.
It's interesting. I'm going to say yes. I mean, natural selection is behind the development of agency in artificial systems, but I just put it to my mind, do we have cases where artificial systems are competing with each other to succeed and being surviving or being retained when they succeed? I can imagine AI designers perhaps running simulations of that kind, but that's not the first way in which artificial systems are products of natural selection. The first and most obvious way is that we are products of natural selection, and we designed artificial systems to have goals, so they have kind of derived goals in virtue of the way we've designed them. But there's no big barrier between systems that are given goals by the blind watchmaker, natural selection, which works very much like a designer, and systems which are given goals by us, the actual designers. The structure is the same. The process giving rise to these systems will lead to them having traits that conduce to certain ends, and they have those traits because they conduce to those ends. And that's true both of systems designed by natural selection and systems designed by intelligent humans. But there's another dimension to natural selection operating in artificial systems, which is humans themselves, in developing their agential abilities, have natural selection going on inside them. I mean, instrumental conditioning, or more generally, trial and error reasoning are both cases of natural selection. We try various things, either in behavior or in imagination, and then retain the ones that lead to successful results. And so a lot of our behavior is shaped by natural selection in learning. The structure of instrumental conditioning is just like the structure of Darwinian natural selection. And there's lots of details here, but to generalize, a lot of recent AI systems, in particular deep neural nets, are systems that shape themselves by internal natural selection, by instrumental conditioning. I mean, it's very striking that Hesebus, the founder of DeepMind, who was a child prodigy, he was a chess prodigy, he was a successful computer science student, computer science entrepreneur, and then he got interested in artificial intelligence, and he didn't go and do more computer science. He went and did a degree, a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. He wanted to work out how the human neural system worked so he could design machines that worked like the human neural system. And that's exactly what all the deep neural nets are.
All right. Perhaps it's I'm digressing perhaps, but when you speak of natural selection in these systems, it is not as, I mean, you do not think of natural selection in this term in terms of fitness of offsprings or such things. So do you use, for example, ideas such as differential persistence, differential, I mean, what's your, I mean,
what's being selected within the systems are different possible behaviors. Don't think of the systems as having offspring systems, and the offspring systems that are selected are allowed to generate more offspring systems. That's not the model. The model is inside the system. You have different bits of behavior, different outputs you might produce in response to a certain input, and if the output's successful, then the connections giving rise to that output are reinforced, and if it's unsuccessful, the connections giving rise to that output are weakened. And think of that as a matter of certain connections and dispositions to output being preserved, being selected by just you get a sweetie if you get it right, and you get a slap if you get it wrong.
All right,
sticks and carrots.
So, all right, very well. Preserving is, I think, that the main term here. I think that you collaborated on a paper with Justin Garson, I think, and I put that paper in the reading list here. I think that it would be related to the notion of natural selection. But with regard to some other thing that you said earlier about goal-directedness in artificial systems and the goal-directedness there may reflect the goal-directedness of the designers. Yeah, with regard to some kinds, functional kinds, such as cars, perhaps. Perhaps we can say that their shared properties can reflect the intentions of their makers. But with regard to, so there are cars, for example, which are some sort of functional category, functional color, and they have properties. These properties are reflecting the collective intentions of their designers, for example. With regard to agency or autonomy, any form of autonomy, it seems a bit, I do not try to depend on my intuitions, but autonomy is supposed to be something that is originated by the system itself. It could hardly be a reflection of intentions or goals of the designers, could it?
Yeah, but that happens very early on in deep neural nets. I mean, here's one way of understanding how AlphaGo or Alpha Chess work and why they're so much better than the old-fashioned Deep Blue. So computers can quite easily calculate where the chess positions are going to be given all the possibilities, say 5 moves in, and an old chess system like Deep Blue used to work out all the possibilities 5 moves in, and then evaluate the positions, and then make the move that would lead to the most advantageous position. But they got the valuation of the positions from the chess experts. They went to human chess experts and said, is this a good position? Is this good? And they got some way of evaluating positions. So Deep Blue did quite a lot of heavy duty branch search, and then appealed to the human designers, the human experts, to tell them which was a good path. The difference with the deep neural net chess systems, Go systems, is that they themselves learn how to evaluate the positions 5 moves in. And what they do is they play a zillion games, and they see which positions 5 moves in correlate with eventual success. and then they do the calculations to work out which will be the most advantageous situation by their own experience. And in fact, human chess players and teachers and so on are spending a lot of time now trying to figure out what the computers see in positions that we've never seen before. Anyway, in answer to your question, this looks like a perfectly straightforward case of the chess machine being set to ultimate goal by the designer of winning chess games, forming a lot of intermediate goals, such as let's get a position where my queen is defended, except it hasn't just acquired those goals from experts, it's figured out its own sense of what to aim for 5 moves down. So it's acquired, as it were, instrumental goals, just like humans do. They have some ultimate goal, and then they figure out, in order to achieve that goal, I better achieve some other things, and they form instrumental goals, and chess machines are doing that just fine. That's what makes them work.
All right, very well. And then there is the question of sophistication or complexity of agency. So sometimes there, how could we gauge the complexity or sophistication of agency? It was basically what made me to think of anthropocentric nature of agency, because I think that we take our own case and then we measure the similarity to our own case, and as more similar they get to us, we think that they are more complex, more sophisticated.
I think the formation of long-term intentions is the real distinguishing feature of human intelligence. It kind of marks us off from the other animals. I think the other animals have systems, think alpha chess, which enable them to act in the present in very sensitive and sophisticated ways. They form intermediate goals. They've acquired by trial and error learning information of how to achieve those intermediate goals. So in any situation, they will set and chain a sequence of behaviors that are well suited to achieve their current drives, motives, desires, whatever you want to call them. But what they don't have a system for doing is coordinating their actions over the longer term, so as to do something now, because if I do this, then I will have a shelter over my house, and then I will be able to store the food and weave clothes and so on, because the system that tells them what to do at any moment is liable to be distracted. I mean, I once wrote in a paper that primates, monkeys, are no good at following through some complicated sequence of actions, because you can always distract them by giving them a banana. You show them a banana, and that's going to override all their other current motivations, because that now becomes the strongest motivation, so you act in pursuit of that. Humans can set themselves a project that will last over hours or days or years, and that's the business of forming intentions. You resolve that I'm going to do these things in sequence, and it allows you to coordinate your actions over time. It allows other people to coordinate their actions with you, because they know what you're going to be doing tomorrow. And I think that's the real mark of human sophistication. Yeah, that's my highest level of agency. Michael Bratman style intention formation, and it gives us a whole nother level of abilities that animals just don't have.
Very well, thank you very much. I think that I have just one more question, which is about what you said earlier about leaving consciousness aside. So I think that in, for example, experimental context, usually when we think of agency, We measure age, or understanding of agency comes with some phenomenal aspects. I mean, so explicitly, we either speak about our phenomenal experience of agency, or implicitly, we think about or we measure the, or speak of the subjective feel of time, how we perceive time subjectively between when we exert control and or do some voluntary action and we achieve the result. So there seems to be some sort of phenomenal aspect into agency. But I gather that you do not think that discussion of agency in artificial systems or natural systems is necessary associated with discussion of consciousness. What could you elaborate on this a bit more?
Okay, so it depends how you think about consciousness. And I fear that many people in philosophy, even more so in cognitive science, cognitive neuroscientists, scientists working on the nature of consciousness, think of consciousness as dualists. I mean, they wouldn't be happy to hear this, but they're thinking of consciousness as something extra to the physical and functional organization of brains, the workings of organisms. And I don't think that's how a materialist should think. If you're a convinced materialist, there's nothing there apart from the physical and structural features of the brain. So if consciousness is there, which, I mean, I don't want to deny that there's consciousness, I think there is, you better find some physical or functional feature of the brain that constitutes consciousness, and then you could describe it in physical or functional terms, and you could account for its relevance to agency in those ways. I mean, I actually think at first pass, our conscious states are those that we're introspectively aware of. And you might then wonder, what does introspective awareness of certain states contribute to agency? And that's a rather difficult question. But maybe it plays a role in sophisticated intention formation. You need to think about the processes going on inside you in order to be able to coordinate your actions over time. But so don't think of some consciousness as some extra magic ingredient genie, that kind of some light that gets turned on at a certain point and then makes an extra contribution to our cognitive workings. It shouldn't be like that, and materialists shouldn't think like that. It's just some aspect of the processing that could perfectly well be described in physical or functional terms.
Yeah, the point is very well taken. But look, even a hardcore physicalist may think that, all right, consciousness is not something extra, but it is not as if everything physical or material, even every goal-directed physical or material process could demonstrate agency. And we need some criterion for being able to set a distinction between things that are agentic, at least in the higher level of sophistications, and things that are not agentic, you know. And for some sophisticated processes that we can discover in our own case, agency is usually correlated with consciousness. I do not think that one should be necessarily dualist to think in this way about agency.
Good. I should be careful here. I mean, I'm accusing people who think differently from me as being being dualists, and they say no, we're not dualists. We just think a bit differently from you. And I want to say yes, you are dualists, but I shouldn't do that. They know better what they're thinking than I do. So let me come at this from a different angle. Okay, consciousness is important. You don't have to be a dualist to think consciousness is important. Let's put those two thoughts on the table. I'm not going to query them. Even so, granting those two thoughts, I don't think it's a good idea, even for somebody of your mind, to try and decide which systems are really agents. I mean, I discussed now which systems are really deserving of moral consideration by asking, well, let's figure that out by figuring out which systems are conscious. So we're going to be able to find out which systems are conscious, and as a result of that, use that to decide which systems are really exhibiting intelligent agency.
All right.
And now I put to you, but why should this detour through consciousness help? You and I have just agreed that for us materialists, consciousness is just a matter of certain kinds of complicated physical processing. So it's not going to help to go via consciousness. No. For a start, there's going to be no sharp line. If you're a materialist about consciousness, very hard to resist the idea that there will be some borderline cases. I mean, consciousness is some kind of complex physical aspect of cognitive systems, and by its nature, physical processing will come in degrees. There'll be systems that have some of it, so a bit more, and there's going to be no sharp point where suddenly it goes from being physical processing that doesn't generate consciousness to just suddenly there's a sharp point where consciousness is there. So if you thought it's a bit hard to tell whether, let's see, what shall we do? Fish are really intelligent agents, or worms are really intelligent agents. Okay, we're going to figure it out by finding out whether they're conscious. That's right. You find out more about their brain, and you're still left looking: are they sophisticated enough to be intelligent agents? And asking whether they're conscious, you're just going to run into the same bit of vagueness.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it took longer than I expected, and you spent too much time on this. But is there anything that you want to add, something that didn't come up in the discussion, and you want to add to what you said earlier?
No, I think we got to the point which I think I've got something definite to say, something that I feel is important, which is the thought that if you're puzzled about knowing all about their cognitive workings, if you're puzzled about which animals are really intelligent, which animals are intelligent enough, and this is something I've written about, to be deserving of moral consideration, don't feel that you'll get a solution to that by finding out whether they're conscious. If you're materialist, consciousness is just more physical processing, and you'll do better to bypass the issue of consciousness and ask directly, is this animal cognitively, physically complex enough to be counted as an agent, to be counted as a being worthy of moral consideration? Ask that question directly. Maybe once you got a positive answer to that, you can use that as a reason for counting them as conscious. But the questions of moral standing and real intelligence should come first. Questions of consciousness should come after.
All right. So I thank you very much for this excellent talk. I thank our reviewers for watching this program. So thank you very much.